Perfect podcast. Welcome to the Almost Perfect podcast, a celebration of fuck-ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Hi, I'm Bob Perfect, and I'm a functional fuck-up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes. And today we are learning from Aluta Null. Aluta is a game designer and digital artist, although I think her games definitely have a lot of artistic merit to them. I quite enjoy her work. She's got a lot of imagination, and she's someone who's always imagining, always thinking, and always creating. She's also someone who sends out a lot of funding applications, which you will find out about in just a little bit. We talk about working with VR and AR. We talk about NFTs and online identities, and we even get into accessibility when it comes to digital art. Of course, I need to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by you, which means you can support it by going to patreon.com/almost perfect, or you can go to almostperfect.co.za. I'll catch up with you at the end of the episode. But right now, here it comes without further ado. It's the Almost Perfect podcast with Aluta Null. So how are you living, Aluta?
I'm surviving, but I mean, shame, I'm doing more than surviving. I think I'm in a very interesting space in my life, but for the most part, I'm just trying to stay calm, not have too many expectations. Yeah, but like kind of be grateful for the fact that, as I said, things could be worse. Yeah, I think I'm good for the most part. To answer your question, for the most part, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, we're chatting a little bit off cast about it, how it's like at the moment, especially after the couple of years we've had, like it feels like there's a little bit of breathing room, and it's like things aren't perfect. Like personally for me, like things are nowhere near the level they were going into 2020. Like going into 2020, my
Mm.
life was like I was going up that roller coaster, looking at the top and just going, yeah, this is going to be great. It's not knowing that like it was an illusion and I was already at the top and it was all about to come crashing down. So I'm also in a position where it's like, things are all right. They could be
Yeah.
worse. And I've learned to appreciate things. But it's weird because you are someone who I've seen put out a ton of work, and like just judging by your online presence, you seem to be constantly working, constantly making art, constantly doing something. So yeah, like how do you find the time to do all of this work in the modern environment where I know stuff like work and funding can be a bit of a struggle?
Firstly, my therapist said like I have to stay busy. She was like, because there was a time I told her, yeah, no, I think I just need a break. Like I need to calm down, not do as many things. And she almost fell off her chair. She was like, you cannot not be busy. You have to stay busy. Obviously, to a healthy amount.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I find that I'm a very curious mind, and like I always wanna I'm always thinking, and I'm like I always have a whole bunch of theories, hence the handle Aluta's theory. Like I'm always thinking about things, and sometimes just thinking about things isn't enough, and you need to actually start experimenting and putting those ideas out there. So I think it's more so like I have a constant urge to communicate things, and I'm very awkward. So like I can't really communicate. Like I struggle saying what I want to say a lot of the time, verbally, orally. So like if I want to say something, I feel like the easiest way to say it is in art. And at the moment, like I have a lot of projects that I'm working on. I have an animated show that's coming out. I have no clue when.
It's like, do you mind just telling me about that? We'll get into the other stuff afterwards, but what's the deal with that?
Sure. So like I'm not gonna say too much about it, but I used to work in retail at exclusive books,
I,
and
I thought so, judging by everything is bothering me. I figured you worked in retail at
yes,
some point.
Yeah, I don't know. I worked in retail while I was studying, just like a cute way to get extra money. At the time, there was also a lot going on family wise, so I didn't want to feel like I was dependent on anyone. I didn't want to feel like a burden on top of all the chaos. So I also just wanted my own way to kind of make money. So yeah, like I worked in retail, and hands down, I worked with the sickest group of people I've ever met, which was insane. One of the people I met started working on the same day as me, and it turned out that he was actually like a writer, specifically with the hopes of writing movies and shows. And him and I became very close, and we would just witness a lot of interesting things in the store. And we said, we're making a show about this. So we literally used our coworkers as inspiration for each character. Like some people, some of the characters you can literally point and say, "Oh, that's Daniel. Oh, that's so and so." But obviously fiction, so we had to like change it up and introduce new characters that don't exist. But it's been a long time in the making, especially because I'm the only one animating it. It's already
Oh
written.
shit, that
It's
is a lot of
already
work.
yeah, it's already written. We've already recorded the voices of our brilliant cast. So it's kind of all on me right now because everyone's done their part. So I'm animating, and that takes forever. And I also just don't enjoy animating. So it's yeah, it's gonna be a while, but yeah, that's a really exciting thing that I hope I get done. And like when it is done, we're considering pitching it to someone because I don't think, like, considering my busyness, I don't think we'll get it done anytime soon.
Well, NFVF is open for funding at the moment, so send them a pitch and maybe get some money for it, and see if you can get someone else involved. If that's if that's something you want to open it up to, because yeah, like
Mm,
myself and Sheldon Bankston have been working on this cartoon called Super Delinquent Squad, and we're still very early in the stages. We've pitched to like Fred's Films and got good replies from them. They did
nice.
deny us, but like it's fine. It's fine. They gave us some good notes. But yeah, we got funding from the
Awesome.
NFVF early on. And yeah, we're applying again now so that we can try and get it animated into like a little short, and then we can pitch that.
Mm,
But yeah, it's one of those avenues. Have you looked into that at all?
no, I have not.
Okay, well, please, because I think the 18th of Feb, if I'm correct, is the deadline for this year or for this current thing. So anyone listening who's a potential filmmaker, go check that out. And then obviously, Aluta, please go check that out.
Thank you. No, I definitely will because getting this thing done is a dream. I just don't have time. um,
Is the time because of money or because of other work?
well, like money, I try to do things that are financially beneficial, but like I also recognize that I need to do other work to get to the point where people actually want something from me that they'll pay for. So it's also about like building a nice portfolio. And I think I'm currently in the stage where I'm pushing hard to build that portfolio. So that's why I'm so busy.
Okay,
Um, yeah.
that makes sense. Like, but it's impressive, like your outputs. I've seen so
Thank
much.
you.
Like, like your link tree has a bunch of stuff, but then you go to like your Instagram, and then you go to your Itch.io, and then like it's just like, yeah, I don't know how you manage to actually do all of it, because also you seem to be someone who consumes a lot of media, right?
Not as much as I want to. But also, just quickly to go back to what you just said about there being a lot of content, I also just have a lot of fun. Like, this is fun to me. So that's why I do so much. But in terms of consuming, I try to. Like, my problem is if I fall in love with something, I'll stick to that one thing and consume it until I never want to consume it again. And then I'll
I'm
move
with
on
you.
and have a new obsession, you know? So I do consume a lot of media, but I think rather I spend a lot of time consuming media as opposed to having a wide array of media that I consume, you know? Does that make
That's fair.
sense?
It does. Like you dive deep into like certain topics or certain like, types of media, I guess. Because it
Yeah.
seems like you create games, but that obviously comes from a love of playing games, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I was wondering because your games are a lot more like political or have some interesting things to them that like, typical games don't. And so that's why I was wondering like if you grew up playing games and this was a way to like, express yourself utilizing something you loved, or it was just a current technology that you were utilizing, to create art.
yeah, definitely the latter. Like,
Oh
of
wow.
course, I grew up playing games, but like I wasn't too heavy into it. I mean, the kinds of games I played were like simulation games. That was a nice way to like. I think maybe I was also just I don't know, like parents, divorce, stuff like that. And I just wanted like another way to escape. And like simulation
Yeah.
games are a really fun way to do that. So, other than like The Sims, other kinds of genre, I guess, of games, I don't really, I guess, like sports, like not sports like soccer, but sports like racing games, like Need for Speed. That's something that I would always play. And I also really loved computer games, like computer games, especially games like on browsers. That was me a lot as a kid. And then
Yeah.
I kind of just stopped. And then when I started studying digital arts, everything is taught in the context of game design. So like when you learn how to animate, you learn how to animate for games.
Hmm.
So it was during my degree where I really fell in love with the art of making games. And again, it goes back to me, often struggling to communicate. And I think that games are probably the most powerful form of communication because there are so many ways that you can communicate in games. Interactivity alone, the decisions that the designers make when it comes to interactivity and how you interact with it and when they want you to interact with it and in what way and how they want you to feel when you interact with it, like that alone is a huge way of communicating. So I think games just opened up um, a really exciting world for me where I could say so much and I could do so much, and it was obviously being done in like a really fresh and new, well, not new, but like exciting and yeah, exciting space that people are getting more and more interested in.
Yeah, it's not necessarily new, but like
Yeah.
it's definitely in terms of something being taught, that is very new.
Mhm.
Like, people have been making art through games since since they learned how to code, essentially. But the thing
Yeah.
is, learning how
Yeah.
to code used to be something that was like very insular and for very like dedicated handful of people. And now the accessibility of all of it has opened up the possibilities of what you can even do because so
Mm.
many more people have access now. So, yeah, like you're just more able to have access to so many more kinds of games. And also, everyone's just like, like riffing on stuff that they grew up with and reinterpreting it and giving it modern context and stuff like that. And that's what I love. It's just the like mashing of influences that comes across and
Mm.
that you just like start to get with modern games and modern art. It's like it's just this constant like part of it kind of sucks sometimes that everything's just a rehash, but at the same time it is also like for you like with your games and stuff, they do remind me of old school, like even like old school like Doom, like in terms of the stylings and stuff, like the brick
Mhm.
walls like
Yeah, yeah.
that like it just like it's got a certain feel to it that's just like like yeah, that personally just like has like a lot of nostalgia value for me. But at the same time, then interacting with it, like you get to create these cool experiences for people. Like you get to shape not just like with art, you can paint something and it's there and they can experience it how they experience it, like they can take it away with them in their mind. But
Mm.
games you can actually give people a full on experience, like
Experience.
hours
Yeah.
long, like storytelling essentially.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, definitely. There's something I wanted to bring up, but I don't know if it's something that you're gonna bring up at all, like my exhibition, because just based on
The
experiences, like
Bogan Club one, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. just like you're saying, experiences, and that like you can use that, and like you can take away inspiration from games in that sense. Like a lot of people that missed my exhibition are kind of like, oh, how can I see this? How can I see that? And like, hey man, you had to be there. Like a lot of what I did was an experience. So yeah, games, I've learned that from games as well. Yeah.
Well, I actually thought like so I obviously didn't get to experience your exhibition being in Durban and stuff, but like I did
Right.
read up on your exhibition and I loved yeah, that interactivity that you had between like the real world and then using VR as well. So do you want to tell people like yeah, what that exhibition was all about and how it came together?
I don't know if I should start with how it came together or what it was about. But like, I mean, briefly, it was about mental health and I guess mental health disintegration, and more so different states existing in the same place. And I tried to do that by creating a physical room, installation, I guess. But like, I struggle calling it installation art because some of it was really bad, and also I don't really know much about that space. But like, yeah, I guess an installation of a room, and when you interact with the room digitally, you get a completely different story. And obviously, the room is set up in a very light, happy way. It's meant to look like a sitcom set. But then when you interact with it digitally, the same things that you saw that were either like insignificant or made you feel happy, when you now interact with them digitally, it gives you a completely different story. There's a lot of dark imagery. And then that was kind of the AR side of it. And then with the virtual reality side of it, with the actual headsets, I remodeled the exact same room digitally with 3D. And you saw the exact same room, but rather than seeing all the light-hearted happiness, it kind of looked like a room of like an apartment of a depressed person with like a very depressed person. It's like not looking after themselves. There's like
I
pizza
know what that
boxes
looks like.
everywhere.
The old apartment used to look like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've also kind of seen bits of that room in my own room, like, so just kind of making it look a bit like, I don't know, destructive, whether it's mentally destructive, like physical destruction, like there wasn't a roof. And like when you looked up, there were like eyes looking back at you. So it also kind of had
Oh
that
shit.
anxiety feel of like, you're being watched. So like, yeah, it was kind of just all about the mental states and how the same thing can be very, very different in different ways.
And is
How it came about.
I was gonna
Sorry.
quickly ask there, does the lens of it being through, digitization add to that? Like, the fact that like, yeah, it's only through these digital lenses that, you see those things. So like is there that extra element of it bringing out the worst in us maybe?
In terms of the digital bringing out the worst in us.
Yeah, like in terms of like social media, being online, that sort of
Yeah, yeah,
stuff,
yeah. Yeah, that was definitely something that I had in mind when doing this. In fact, there was a section that actually it got removed like a few days, literally like 2 days before the exhibition. But that entire section was about like social media and our phones. And I felt like that section kind of also added a bit more context to why the digital was being used as well. Obviously, it was used because it was like the way I wanted to communicate things could only be done through that. But it's
Yeah.
also something to think about, like, yeah, like it's just I'm sad that section got removed because I felt like it added a lot more to it. But due to the quality of it, we made the decision to no longer include it.
Yeah, that's fair. Sometimes when you got deadlines looming, you got to unfortunately make some tough decisions. But then, yeah, how did it come about?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. People always ask me, "How do you get these things?" Like, especially people I study with, because I studied with insanely talented people, and they, I feel, should be getting some of the opportunities I'm getting. But like, they're all like, "How do you get this stuff?" you just apply, man. It's not that deep. Like, you write a proposal, you wait until submissions are open, and you apply. So Bubblegum has a gallery, Bubblegum Gallery, and I think each month, I think it started last year, they had a program where they would invite people to submit proposals for like your dream exhibition, and the person who was selected would essentially get a studio, well, get a residency. So like you get the studio space to work in for the month, and then to close it off, you get the actual exhibition. Mine was slightly different because it coincided with a lot of festivals. So I had the studio for the month, and then the exhibition was also for the month, the following month. Normally, I think the exhibition is like a week, but for me, because like there was a lot going on, it ended up being for the month. So yeah, shout out Bubblegum Club for seeing something in that proposal, because I had an amazing time. Yeah, it was really cool. But you literally just apply to things and hope for the best. And like work hard in that application, you know? Don't just apply nonsense. Apply something really dope.
Okay, well, how much of your time is spent on applications per week?
This week, because I'm
In
unemployed,
general, you
I'm
can
out of
average it
school.
out, but yeah.
Um, geez, I don't really know how to like try and quantify it, but I'd say like an hour or two a day, depending on the application. Because some applications require a lot more work, they require a lot
Yeah.
more extensive documents.
Yeah, those are the ones that like I have open in my tabs for like 3 weeks, and then the
Yes,
then the expiration date
same,
hits. Uh,
literally. But yeah, like, yeah, an hour or two a day.
that's actually that's
Is
pretty
that little?
dedicated. No, that's a hell of a lot.
Oh,
Like I need to step my game up because yeah, like lately I've been sending proposals and funding stuff because I've never really done it before in the past, but everyone's always told me to do it. And now I'm like, you know what? I've got all these things I want to do. I need money to do them. There's people who give money to do these things. Let me try. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
like,
They say no.
exactly. What's the worst that could happen? That's something I always try to remind myself. But like, I think maybe it sounds like a lot for you, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like when it comes to your proposals and stuff, I think you already have a nice, like, specifically for the podcast, I think you already have a nice, I guess, portfolio. So it's more so about you communicating ideas. Whereas for me, well, ideas and like plans of execution. Whereas for me, sometimes I have to create the work first because they want the work in the application. So I consider
Yeah.
that an hour or two a day a part of the getting the work ready, you know? So I think maybe that's also why it seems like a lot for you, because if you were to include your podcast in a part in your podcast recordings as preparing for a lot of these applications, then I think you can see
Okay,
you
fair
would
enough.
do a lot more.
I
Yeah.
thought okay, I thought it was the writing of all the filling in of the forms and finding all the new places to see who's got money, and then for me personally, I do research on like who the company is or who the nonprofit is, just to make sure that they're
Yes.
legit and like all of that. So like that's an extra like half hour, like just to see if I should
Yeah.
submit. And then yeah, I always, as I say, leave it for 3 weeks, and then forget. Like yeah, it's too late. So one day I'll get one in time, and they'll actually say yes, and yeah, people will get some new content out of me. But anyway, one thing I did want to chat about is I really loved Everything Is Bothering Me. I thought it was like it said a lot. Obviously, like it was like about, in some ways I felt like it was about releasing frustrations online and surveillance capitalism, and then just like a whole lot of like a
Mhm.
host of issues just being like yeah, like in a way it was kind of like to me it was like a critique on Twitter, but even deeper than that, because of like how even if you try to write your personal thoughts like anywhere like digitally, the chances of something else, like a scanner darkly, I guess, being able to
Mm.
look like, see your shit and interact with you and like tell you you're wrong and that sort of stuff, like was really, yeah, like for me personally it creeped me out a little bit, but then also at the same time there were some helpful suggestions, so it was like, yeah, it was quite a interesting experience. So what was the motivation for that? Yes, was that the working in retail, like, and just getting shit off of your chest?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That thing was actually, I made it like 2 years ago, and then like I uploaded a snip. Well, it didn't look the way it looked, just slightly different. And then like I uploaded a snippet to Instagram, and then like I just left it, and I never really paid attention to it. Then a year later, Carly from Tomorrow Gallery, she hit me up and she was like, "Yo, we have a group show. Submit something." It was, what was the theme? I don't remember what the theme was, but it had to do with, oh, it was called Digital Gardens. Yes, it was called Digital Gardens, and it was all about cultivating a digital space for oneself and authoring it and maintaining it and stuff like that. So I decided to make a digital diary. So I took the initial project I had that like I didn't really pay attention to, and then I brought it into a desktop type setting, and then
Yeah,
I kind of
I
used it
remember
as a
that
digital
background.
diary. Yes. Yeah. So like I kind of just decided to create a digital diary as a way of someone digitally having a living, breathing space and look and attending to it. And yeah, and of course I wanted to talk about the things that were bothering me. Some of those things weren't like real things that were bothering me, which is dope because you don't know what's real and what isn't, and that's kind of like a safe space for me as an artist.
Sure.
But yeah, that's how it came about. It was just an exhibition that needed some work, and I kind of had some ideas and put it together. But yeah, retail definitely inspired, I think, a lot of the frustration.
Yeah, like a lot of your work has a pretty strong anti-capitalist sentiment to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know
Yeah,
why that is? Like, I'm just a very lazy person, to be honest. And I feel like humans
doesn't
should
seem like
be
it.
allowed to be lazy. Okay, well, eh,
Like, I think no,
I
like,
mean,
I
I
think
can
we
see
should be
why you
allowed to
say
be
that.
productive in different ways. Like, so I'm with you.
True.
I'm definitely not lazy. It's just the work that
Okay.
I produce is not necessarily offer much of value to the market, if that makes sense, you know? So it's like I spend my time doing things that don't necessarily increase, my profit margins too much. Whereas I
Oh,
could be
okay.
doing that. Like doing this, like creating this sort of
Mm,
stuff or doing
mm.
stand-up comedy and those sorts of things, it's like that's how I want to spend my time. And in a capitalist society, art and those sorts of things aren't necessarily valued the same way other workers. And so we are
Yeah,
seen
yes.
as being lazy if we're spending our time drawing things or writing jokes or doing whatever. Where meanwhile, that is work. Like that is creating new things into the world. Like it's just the market sucks.
That's a dope perspective. Like, I honestly never thought of it that way, but and you're right. It's because I'm not including the art stuff that I do when I call myself lazy. I'm specifically referring to like labor, like traditional forms of
Yeah.
labor. But you're right. Yeah, I've never thought of it this way. Thank you for this
Well,
perspective because it makes me feel a lot better.
yeah, well, I mean, because it does like frustrate me, like seeing the amount of work like a lot of my friends have put into a lot of stuff, in their lifetimes, and the financial rewards just aren't there. And it's not even just my friends; it's worldwide.
Mm,
You look at so many amazing artists and musicians who die poor, and then other people get paid, selling their work after their death, and it's just like one of the most frustrating
yeah.
things for me. That's yeah, like, and there's just the ways the world values things that is very whack in my mind, at least, and it's also leading to the destruction of humanity. So, oh well, not much you can do about
Yeah.
that. Uh,
Just on that, there's actually an artist called Open Mike Eagle. He's a rapper. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah,
him,
yeah.
but he has a song called Very Much Money. And in it, he essentially says, my friends are superheroes. None of us have very much money, though. And he describes them as superheroes because of all the dope things they do. Like they write, they're magicians, they're comedians, they do yoga, photography, they know politics. Like, but, you know, it's not, a lot of those things aren't really valued or seen as seen as valuable as they are, you know?
Yeah, and it's also like if you don't play nicely with the system spits you out. Like that is just the
Yeah.
fact, like of the matter. Like that's manufacturing consent and stuff. You know, it's like it's very difficult if you're an artist who's critiquing, you know, the power structures that you're going to benefit from those power structures, unless you're like Banksy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I did want to chat about, I guess, is in terms of capitalism and you know art in the current era and stuff, and like you work with collage and glitching and you know remixing other people's work quite a bit, or just at least imagery and videos that you know are in the public. So, how do you feel when it
Mm.
comes to like ownership of art and these sorts of things? You know, if someone takes your stuff and remixes it, how cool are you with that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely something I'm grappling with, which is I think why I've started having like a bit of an obsession with stock images because stock images is so cool. Like even better if there's like a watermark on it. Oh, I love stock
Yeah.
images. But yeah, no, it's definitely something that I think about a lot. If I do take someone else's work, I like in and like remix it. I do try to credit or like at least make it very clear. If I don't credit, I just make it very clear that like that wasn't mine, but this is mine. Like for example, the asset might not be mine, but the I glitched it or I animated it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it seems like a lot of what I currently use, well, I only use free things. Let's start there. I only use free things that aren't mine, but I also feel like I just create a lot of my own. Like I create a lot of my own 3D assets. When it comes to someone potentially doing that to me, I'd have a huge issue, which is again why I'm struggling with this because I see.
Why would you have an issue? Like, is
I
it
think it
to
depends
like
how it's done, actually.
yeah, because that to me seems to be the big thing, especially like with the glitch community. Because from what I understand, like with glitch
Yes.
art and stuff like that, you know, in like the vaporwave community, I guess, you know, like remixing stuff is a big part of things as long as you put enough of a spin on it. You know, if you remake it
Mm,
into
mm.
something different, like, you know, it's not like just kind of, you know, changing a pixel. You're like completely making a new piece of art out of someone else's art, then people seem to be pretty cool with it.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I think it depends on how would it be done. I haven't really had that kind of situation where someone has taken inspiration from my work and either remixed it or created something new based on that. Well, at least not that I know of. So I think like at the time, depending on how it's done, like if it's dope and like they really honored the initial piece, I guess, and like made something that's really interesting, and like they thought about making something new and unique, then I don't think I'd have an issue with it. But like if it's just blatant, lazy, then I'd be like, ah, dude, I mean, something, you know. I'd be a bit frustrated, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you because I do think like we just have that's the problem is like we've got a culture in the society where people do the bare minimum, and then we also have the other side of things where people like just really try very hard to like yeah create new shit. So I'm with you
Yeah.
there. I guess that could also lead us into what are your opinions on NFTs?
Yo. And I knew this was gonna come up, but I
I
was
mean, you've seen
hoping
my
it
timeline
wouldn't.
lately. You've seen my timeline. You know, like. Oh fuck!
I feel like you
Unfortunately,
understand NFTs a bit better than me. I know that you're quite critical of NFTs.
I'm
Um,
critical of the like bored ape yacht club kind of stuff. You know,
mm,
the profile picture stuff, and then some of the ideas like
yeah,
about transferring, you know, stuff across games and stuff. Like to me, just feels like people don't really understand what they're talking about. But the idea of digital ownership doesn't, you know, necessarily bug me as much as it probably bugs other people, because
yeah.
I've been dealing with that sort of shit for years, you know, as a gamer. So it's like it's
Mm,
just the whole idea, like I like the idea of artists being able to make money and, you know, sell ownership of work, especially in the digital space where that can be difficult, you know? Like it can be very hard for someone like you to sell like a VR experience, I guess, unless you sell it as a
mm,
game. And so, like, I get
yes.
that there's potential benefits to NFTs, but I also think using Ethereum for it is fucking like mind-numbingly stupid and just inefficient and probably going to, I don't know, just cause major long-term problems. And yeah, there just seems to be a lot of scams and a lot of like it's a fad and money, like it's a bubble at the moment in terms of the financial aspect, but at some point maybe it could be useful. And I think it started out with good intentions. So those are my thoughts, even though I asked you what are yours.
For me, I'm more when it comes to NFTs, I really just appreciate the ownership side of it. When it comes to selling them and whatnot, that's still something that I'm still really trying to understand and like form a real opinion on. But I do appreciate just that, like us as digital artists have a way of saying, okay, this is ours, I own it. I can sell it to you in this way. I appreciate NFTs because I think it was more so my introduction to NFTs. Twitter was where I first discovered the concept of NFTs, and that was literally just because all the small digital artists that I really love, because Twitter has an amazing community of artists, but
Yeah.
they were kind of like losing their shit. Like they were hype about this, and they all got involved, and it I really loved the excitement that they had in terms of, hey, this is mine and I can sell it to you. But when I tried to kind of go into it myself, I minted something. I couldn't sell it because it was like I made it way too expensive.
Well, because you got to include the minting costs and all of that into it. So it's like that's why I say using Ethereum to me is just
Yeah.
fucking stupid. Like, but
Yeah. So like I don't know, when it comes to the selling of him, I'm still trying to figure out how I feel, but I just like that digital artists have a nice way of owning their work.
yeah, like that's the thing. Like I think there's there's good arguments for it in terms of that, because in some ways it does solve a problem that, you know, has existed for a while. But yeah, I just like with digital art, like a part of the appeal to it, I think for some people or for a lot of people and for the internet and, you know, technology is taking away scarcity. You know, like I know art, there's a lot of value in scarcity, which has its own issues and
Mm,
stuff. But like one of the, you know, founding principles of the internet is making stuff accessible for everyone. And like, so I'm someone who
yeah.
is pretty openly like pro the copying of files. Like I'm no longer using the term piracy because like I don't fucking think that's an accurate term for copying files. Like, I'm sorry, it's just it's not the same thing as stealing. Like, I'll debate this forever. And but I also think like the cool thing about stuff being, you know, like easily accessible and, you know, like stuff like piracy, I guess, is that it makes stuff like people who pirate Adobe Photoshop, you know, like eventually become graphic designers who buy it. Like a lot of the time,
Mm,
people who pirate, someone's, album when when they're 18 will eventually buy t-shirts and buy albums and go watch, those people in concerts and stuff like that. And so I think, digital art in some ways, has this amazing thing of free distribution. And the only
Mm,
problem there, I guess, is digital artists struggling to make money off of it. And in a way, NFTs, I guess, kind of solve that.
that was a very interesting, what's the word? Like, I guess, I don't know, but that's just an interesting idea what you just told me about, I guess, pirating things. But yeah, for digital artists, making money is something we constantly stress about because I mean, selling prints also, like when it comes to like, yeah, like selling prints, for example, is not the same as selling an original painting, which is
No,
also why you said no. You disagree?
no, no. I was saying no, it's not. But like at the same time, you can
Oh yeah,
create
yeah.
like AR. You can create AR experiences, like which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, you see, like that's what I've done to try. Yeah, that's what I've done. Like you have the print, which is dope, but then you also have digital art on it. Like it comes with capabilities, which is nice. So I think in that way, yeah, I guess that is quite similar to like traditional art.
And I mean, at the same time, you can scale up in some ways, whereas like artists can sell one thing for 50 grand, you can sell 50,000 things for 100 grand, which is also a lot harder
Ooh,
sometimes.
yes. But that's very true. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
scalable. It's such a strange thing. Like that's the thing. That's why like I wanted to have you on, was to talk about these like aspects of digital art, because I know like so many people who are in the space, but like, have to do a lot of different things to stay afloat.
Especially like I recently have been enjoying making original things for people, like illustrations, digital illustrations. And then also another thing that I've been offering is making Instagram filters for people so that they have their own Instagram filter. That's another really dope thing that I think not a lot of people are thinking about. But again, if you're not interested in AR, then you wouldn't be interested in that. But I think there's a lot of unique ways to try and make money. You just need to be a bit creative and explorative.
Well, that is the cool thing, I guess, is that the digital side of life does offer you so many new opportunities. Because I mean, I guess even like NFTs being the latest trend, I guess, but like
Mm,
there's so many ways to create stuff and get it out there. And I guess what I'm gonna get to is at the same time, with all these new and exciting ways, like stuff using AR, which people can download an app on their phone, and it's super easy for them to, interact with the art if they know to do that. But like stuff like VR, you can create amazing pieces of art that only a handful of people get to see. So how do you,
mm.
yeah, feel about that? Like that, like creating digital art, I guess, creates a disconnect with some people.
Yeah, so that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So, like, I have something really interesting that I'm working on to kind of address this, actually.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to say too much about it because I literally just started working on it yesterday and I am so excited. But like I've been very critical of myself because for the past few years, I have not at all thought about accessibility with my work. I don't like that because I think accessibility is very important. And like, I was speaking to some Dutch people that want me to do stuff for them, and they were kind of looking at my games and they were like, so we noticed that all your games are like built for Windows. Like, that's so interesting. Why'd you do that? Like, do you want it to only be available to specific kind of people? And I'm just like, I literally did that because I use Windows and all my friends use Windows. And like, so just thinking about who has access to my work and how is something that I'm increasingly becoming aware should become a bit of a priority because, like, truth be told, it's not really something I think about a lot.
It's something that you learn to think about as time goes on. I mean, I'm still not even the
Mm,
best with it, with even stuff like, simple things like for accessibility, like for blind people, like just putting in descriptions on photos. And it's
exactly.
like, I
Exactly.
sometimes am too lazy to do it, and I need to stop being too lazy to fucking do that shit. But yeah, because accessibility is a big issue, and I guess would that mean you're now going to start moving towards like more mobile type stuff? Because I mean, like obviously you make stuff for Windows because that's what you work on, but I assume writing stuff for Android and then Linux and that would probably be within the same family.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to what I have access to. So like I can make, in fact I did make a mobile game, but I was the only one that used it as a mobile game. Like I made it. I don't know if you saw on my itch, there's something called Eat a Bitch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
The
that
Pac-Man vibe.
started, yeah, that started off as a mobile game, and then it wasn't really working because that's what I wanted it to be. It wasn't really working, and I was like, ah, fuck it, let's just stick to what I know. Oh yeah, yeah. So like, including mobile games is definitely something small that I'm thinking of. But then, like you mentioned, like blind people, that's been a conversation in the game development space for a long time. How do we make digital games for blind people? And it sucks because a lot of the time you need to have access to technology that most people don't have access to in order to even create those things. Like a lot of the time it has to do with sound and like feeling things and like pressing certain controls. So yeah, accessibility is very important, and we'll see like the ways in which I attempt to be a lot more accessible, especially when it comes to disabilities, and things like my brother has epilepsy. Like I
Okay.
love flashing things. I love glitch, and it's like how do I incorporate things that I love without impacting people. Like I remember there was a game I made and my lecturer was marking it and she was no, it wasn't a game, it was a website. Yeah, I made a website. My lecturer was marking it and she was like, you cannot like do this because it had like a static background, like static in the sense of like that
Oh, like
gray
from
TV.
TV.
Yeah, it had that as the background. And she was like, "No, I have a headache looking at this." So it's that also got me to start thinking about, yo, dude, you need to think about your decisions a bit more and how they're going to impact people because I make art for myself, and that's not fair if you're going to put it on a public platform, because then who do you want to play it? Who do you want to
Well, that's
experience it?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you need warnings for that sort of stuff, but then it does like create a weird, like it does become a bit ableist, I guess, because you are
Yeah,
excluding people from a thing based on their them not just not simply it'll fucking kill them like if they have to interact with it,
yeah.
which
And what fucks
is
me up is that it's almost like I'm intentionally doing it because I know I shouldn't be doing it, but I still do it. I know that I'm lazy and I just don't feel like adding subtitles, like you said. I just don't feel like making it on another platform. But, and that's what kind of like makes me feel worse about it, that I'm knowingly being exclusionary, It's
it
weird.
is it is just like, and I mean, I'll admit that it's wrong to say it, but it's also the truth on the matter is that like it does become a lot more work. And so
Yeah,
we that's why able-bodied people or people who don't deal with those same issues don't necessarily think about it as much or just put it off, because I know like I do things, like I do try sometimes, but I just don't do it enough because it adds so much more to the production of something to add subtitles to stuff. Like even though there's auto transcribers, you still have to go through it and like edit it to make sure it's accurate.
mm,
If you want to, put in that extra effort in that. Of course there are, automatic tools for these things, but you obviously want to create an experience that's as good as, what people are getting. But yeah, I'm glad we actually managed to talk a little bit about that, because it is like the epilepsy thing is a strange one as well, because it's like it's such a fun space, I guess, if you don't suffer from epilepsy to deal with,
Mm,
especially as a glitch artist. But then how do you create something that is accessible but also, yeah, plays with those things?
like I said, I'm still grappling with this stuff. I just want to quickly go back to something you said that reminded me of something I said.
Sure.
Um, you said sometimes it has to do with the fact that it's just more work, and
Yeah.
that's the truth. And like sometimes we just don't have time. But like, not to get too political, but like the reason I say things like, "Who are you making this for?" Then it is because like things like makeup, as a black woman, I'm excluded from a lot of makeup because it just isn't fit for my skin tone. And so then I ask that question a lot. Okay, so then who are you making this makeup for? You know,
Yeah.
you are telling me you're not making it for me. And so I think it's things like that that kind of make me say, ish, but maybe it's worth the hard work.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like if you don't suffer from those things, you don't necessarily give it as much thought. That's why it's like, yeah, like a straight white
Mm,
dude who's like, I mean, I'm deaf in my 1 ear, but like that's its own issue and it's such a small thing. And like obviously got mental health issues, but that's also who
mm,
doesn't? So it's
mm.
like yeah, like when it comes to accessibility, like the whole world is pretty damn accessible to me. Okay, so yeah, we had some gremlins in the system. Not too sure what the problem was. Just had to wait a while and it fixed itself. So yeah, we were chatting about accessibility, but I actually want to chat to you about identity online, especially since you're someone, and I mean, Bob Perfect's not even my real name. So like I'm someone who's dealt with these things a little bit for a while. You have an online identity and that is your artistic name as well. And what is the choice behind that? Why did you go that route? Why do you wear a mask?
Firstly, I've always been very curious if Bob Perfect is your real name because that is such a badass name. Like I was like, is that his real name or? But
No, my real name is Darren Scott, and unfortunately, there was another Darren Scott who said some
oh
things
yeah.
that would not like to be attached to. Although the Bob Perfect
Ah,
thing was before that anyway. Like people who've listened to the podcast know the story, and I'll tell you the story afterwards anyway. But yeah,
okay.
but yeah, Aluta Null, where did that come from? Why are you hiding behind this name and this character?
I have a very okay. I think what made me decide to use a different name, like for a long time I'd been going by my normal name, which is Kamu. I used to have a blog and like I would use my real name and everything. But then when I started putting out like new work as I got into varsity, I got very uncomfortable with like having all the stuff attached to my real name, especially because Aluta Null is more of like a character. Like I feel really safe putting work out through Aluta Null.
Yeah.
It's almost like an alter ego, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things Aluta now was able to say that Gamo's way too shy to say, and it's nice having, like you said, a mask. It's just very comfortable. Also, it was kind of a new version of me, or like just a different version of me, because
Yeah,
Aluta
I get that.
Aluta is a name my mother wanted to give me before I was born, and then my brother, who was 3 years old at the time, said, I like Kamo. And they said, wait, hold up. That's actually a nice name. And then they went with that. So Aluta would have been my name had my brother not interfered,
In a
had
way,
he
it's your
not
true
been listening.
identity.
Yes, yes. And then now I just don't like my last name. I don't like being attached to it. I want to change my last name actually. And also like my dad's like quite well known, so sometimes so I also just don't like that he can kind of attach himself to me, and I just don't want I want my own thing to stand alone. I don't want anyone to be like, wait, is so and so your dad? Because that's happened a lot, and like I just don't like that. So I said, let me just create a whole new identity. It's very safe. I enjoy this a lot.
Yeah, I dig it. And it's something that I've enjoyed about the internet, like since I was a
Mm,
youngster, because for me personally, I was like bullied a lot in school and like I was, the weird kid and like the outsider and just I managed to find, spaces online, but always, behind different handles and always behind different
mm,
like, you know, yeah, elements of my personality in different like forums and stuff like that, and really got to explore myself and really got to like find who I was by having a different mask on in different situations, which I guess like some people might be is like you're being fake, but we contain multitudes. And I think
yes.
sometimes the mask we project in real life is more of the mask than the mask we project online, because you see how people often get rid of the niceties when they're on the internet, and
Mm,
like stuff that they would never say in real life starts coming
exactly.
out when they're behind an avatar. So I always like, yeah, I've always been intrigued by that filter that is created by the internet.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting thing. I'm actually back and forth in and out reading a book called Sad by Design.
Go and write
And
that down.
yeah, no, like it's a really interesting book.
This is about the manipulation of us through like social media, basically because of them wanting to create feedback loops.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or okay.
definitely. And like it also mentions like this idea of wearing a mask, and there's actually a whole chapter on it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's also an interesting resource on the topic if anyone is listening and wants to kind of go into this a bit more. That's a cool book. But yeah, online identities, and I think everyone has an interesting relationship with their own online identity. I just really dislike, like you said, the weird kind of, I mean, you didn't put it this way, but the weird kind of like arrogance or confidence that people now have when they are kind of covered by something. And you see this a lot on Twitter. Like sometimes I look at certain tweets and I'm like, how on earth did you actually find it in you to say this to someone?
I block those people. If I see bad tweets, even if they're not towards me, and even if they're not even
Yeah.
vicious, so they're just like really, really stupid, or just like something that I'm just like, there's no way like I'm gonna get value out of this person. So I just block them. I'm just
Mm,
like, let's cut this out right now. I never have to see your shit ever again. Cause like, yeah, that's the way I'm dealing with Twitter these days, because it's
mm,
just like well, sometimes like you'll see like someone tweet something, especially about vaccines at the moment, and you just like, yeah, you see the replies, and at first I'm like, okay, this is obviously Russian bots. And then sometimes I'm just like, you check the pages and they got like 5,000 followers, and like they got Instagram accounts attached to them and like photos of
mm,
themselves online, and I'm like, wait, you're not even saying this shit like privately, you're not even like hiding, you're just like promoting this stuff with your government name. And that I
yeah.
find to be very interesting, because it's like the internet used to be the space where everyone was trying to be anonymous, everyone was anonymous,
Yes.
and like it was cool because you got to be honest in a lot of ways. And now it's weird because people are still being honest, but they're not necessarily hiding behind their handles as much as like people like you or I might.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot. Just how people carry themselves online. And I also like try to be quite critical of how I carry myself. And someone I saw someone tweet something. They said your Twitter is your CV, and that also got me thinking. I was like, because like in one of my internet lectures, like I think in like fourth year, we actually had this conversation about like, and I know this is maybe going slightly off topic, but about employers reading your tweets and if you think that's like okay or not. And I was like, fuck that. No, I don't want them reading my tweets because I know how I can wile on the internet sometimes. But at the same time, if I was employing someone, I would want to see what they're really like. And I feel like Twitter's a cool way to see a really big part of someone.
Yeah, but I don't know, like, I think there should be a separation between sorry for interrupting, but, like, I think there should be a separation, like, but it's weird because it is public life, it's not private life. Like, when you're posting stuff
Mm,
publicly on Twitter, it's like it used to feel like this own private space and like, you could talk your shit, but it's become this open platform and you've got not even just your boss can see it. Like fucking the entire world could see your tweet tomorrow if you fuck up hard enough. Like
mm,
you could be front page
mm,
news. So you do actually have to practice caution in these spaces because
yeah.
yeah, there are consequences unless you don't really care about the consequences. Like that's also the thing that like I like to remind people. It's like you don't have to like bow down to these things. Like you don't I mean it depends on what kind of jobs you want to get and this and that, but like if you're in
Yeah.
tech and stuff like that, a lot of people have fucked up opinions anyway. So they're not going to be too stressed about
Yeah.
your shitty opinions on Twitter as long as you just don't put their company in your bio. Like they'll be fine with it sometimes.
Mm,
So I think that's also the thing. It's like we can play the games how we want to play them in my mind, like because I understand that the reason why like my employment opportunities have been somewhat limited is because of me wilding out, like not just on Twitter, but like on fucking this, on TV when I've been on TV, on fucking
mm,
various different things, like I've always had my I've always used the opportunity to say some shit. So I get
yeah.
why like I might not necessarily be picked up by the corporates, but I'm not looking for that. So I've decided that for myself. So you create your own freedom, I guess.
Mm, yeah. You create your
Like
own
it just
freedom.
like it just does depend on whether or not you want certain things out of life, and like everyone's got to figure that out for themselves. But I assume you're someone who might not be too interested in the corporate life.
Oh, definitely not. But you see, like, I'm also young, so I'm like, hey, dude, you don't want to fuck up opportunities. I mean, over some characters, you know?
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've just got to make sure that, but it's also like you got to reevaluate what you put out on the internet, I guess. You've got to actually think about it and go, is this me? Is this what I really feel? Can I defend
Mm,
this?
yeah.
Because if you can do that, then cool, post it because then
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really who you are. But like, if you're like, fuck, if I have to defend this, I'm not going to be able to, then just shut the fuck up. Like, that's my opinion.
Fully agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I think I took up quite a bit of that time there. I wanted to ask you because I did see you in another interview mentioning that you don't like making predictions about the future. And do you find people will look to digital artists for predictions about the future because they still see digital art as this futuristic thing and not this thing that's actually, expressing the now?
I think people look to just like artists in general for some sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say a prediction on the future, but like some commentary on what's going on now and what could be going on in future. I think with digital artists specifically, people crave innovation, people crave newness,
Sure.
and I think I personally try to be innovative in the way that I do things, but not necessarily in what I'm saying. Like I just imagine a lot of things, and it's not necessarily like I'm predicting that this is going to happen or I'm even hoping that this is going to happen. It's just me thinking, what if?
I mean, I think that's the basis for good sci-fi in general. Like, not that
Mm,
although your work is like science fiction in a lot of ways. I mean, like that's the way I see it. But yeah, like good sci-fi does like it's not about predicting the future. It's about going, what would happen if the now became that, essentially. Like, like if we keep
100%.
going along this path, what happens? And like, yeah, I think it's weird because by doing that, people have created some pretty interesting predictions that actually did happen, even though they weren't necessary. They were making commentary on their time, like when like when Dune was written, Frank Herbert was making, um, commentary on environmentalism back then. So and like
Mm,
on politics back then and on just religion and stuff like that back then. And it's just interesting that over time it's become prescient, but it wasn't meant to necessarily be.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, so with your work, like as you were saying, you try to imagine what would happen. So what are the starting points for those sorts of things?
like I said, like I just think a lot. I'm always thinking of things, always imagining a lot. But I think when I see, because I think I'm quite observant. So like when I see certain things happening today, I'm kind of like, just what if it was different? What if certain spaces existed? Like, I don't know if you saw my Run Me My Money
Yes, I
um
love that. I
thing.
thought it was very interesting.
Thank you. That was me kind of just imagining, well, what if there was a space where conversations were being archived? And what if it was in a fun club setting? Because clubs can be quite political, you know? So it's like,
Definitely.
why not bring the two together and like just imagine what that would be like, you know? So for me, I'm always experimenting and just imagining a lot. Like in that same thing, I had a vending machine that dispensed free sanitary products. And I was like, well, what if something like that existed? And that's not necessarily a new idea. The whole thing of access to sanitary products should be free, stuff like
No,
that.
but it's
But it's like,
combining it with everything else.
yes, 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 yes. So it's all of, I think that's actually what I do. I bring a lot of ideas together, which is why I think I like AR so much, because you're bringing things together in a very interesting way and you have so much freedom as to what things you want to bring together. So you can literally go ham, you know?
Yeah, you were actually mentioning earlier that you create Instagram filters and that you can do them for other people and stuff. How did you get into that?
How did I get it? Well, I got into AR, augmented reality,
Yeah.
just because I don't remember if I went to an exhibition for. I think, yeah, a friend of mine, Rufara, and I. There was an exhibition at Joburg Art Gallery. It was a comic exhibition, so like it was just comic books everywhere and like snippets
Nice.
from comics. It was really really cool. And then we met an artist, Nkululeko, who was actually using augmented reality on his comic. And Rufaro and I were just like, wait, what? This is so dope. So then I think the following week, we went to a workshop together. And him and I have just been on this journey with augmented reality. And so Instagram filters are another aspect of augmented reality, but it's a lot more accessible and it's a lot easier for
Yeah.
people to use. So I think the main thing that made me realize Instagram is also another platform for AR was when I started noticing that other people were making filters. And I said, I want to do that too. So I just hopped on YouTube University and
Amen.
and watched a few tutorials. And at some point I had like close to 70 Instagram filters out. Like lockdown, early
Yeah.
lockdown, I was just going in.
What do
So
you use to make them?
they're done through a Facebook platform called Spark AR. So it's
Oh,
specifically
okay.
Spark AR
Yeah.
is specifically for creating augmented reality for the Facebook platforms.
Did you have to learn like a whole new thing, or like was it easy to just transfer your knowledge over to that?
It was quite easy. That's the thing. Like for me and Rufaro, it was quite easy. But for people that don't understand 3D and don't understand the interface of like such programs, it might take a while. But for us, because we're like, oh, okay, so there's just the node editor that we would call a shader editor in Blender. In here, it's just a node editor. And oh, okay, so I don't know. It was just a lot easier for us to explore because I kind of already had a starting base because I had learned how to work in 3D. Obviously, it was still something new that I had to take time with, but I think it was a lot easier than had I not had some of the knowledge I already had going into it, you know?
And your knowledge of Blender, did that come from university or did that come from,
Yeah.
well, University of Wits or University of YouTube? Like, because I know Blender's free and there's lots of, like, Blender's amazing and like it's something like I've downloaded and I will eventually like give a go because I see like so many
Uh,
people creating stuff, but like, yo, it's intimidating.
yeah, it is intimidating. And Spark AR, the interface looks quite similar. So, like, these things are very intimidating, but I learned Blender at school, at Wits. And of course, YouTube just enhanced what I wasn't paying attention to in lectures or what I wasn't able to follow along with, which is what I wanted to expand on. But yeah, school was the starting place for that.
And how valuable has the Wits, I know you're not doing postgrad anymore, but like how much has the
Um,
degree you've done there like helped? Do you think this is like a career you could have gotten into on your own? Would it take it longer if you just tried to like do this all through the internet, or like did Wits help like actually guide you?
I think it is possible to learn a lot of what I learned just from YouTube, just from doing your own research. But for me personally, I think I definitely needed to be guided. A lot of what I know, I wouldn't have even been aware is possible had I not gotten a snippet of it at Wits. Like a lot of, like, for example, with glitch art, I would have had no idea about glitch art had I not learned it at school or had not been introduced to the existence of it at school. But like, there's people like there's other artists. There's this artist. He's really cool. His name is Scumboy. He's
Oh
self-taught.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
no, I
spoken
dig
to him a
some
few
boy.
times. He's completely self-taught. So like, it's possible, but I think for me personally, the degree definitely gave me a good foundation, which I really appreciate. And it just opened my eyes to a lot. But honestly, the internet is amazing. You can really learn so much. Because I mean, and even at school, like, I remember when I was in like second year, and because first year, when it comes to making games, it's all like board games and stuff, because they're trying to get us to understand the thinking
Game
behind
design.
designing games. Yeah.
And board
And
games are
then
amazing
second
for
year,
that.
exactly, like board games are brilliant. And then second year is when you start coding and making video games and stuff. And I remember like I was a bit stuck on something and I went to my lecturer and he was like, "Oh, did you Google it? Did you check on YouTube?" And then I was like, no. So that lecturer specifically, I think he was trying to get us to learn how to research things on our own and then only go to him as like, I've tried to figure this out and I can't. Can you, as an expert, help me with the gaps, you know?
Yeah, that's like, so I'm doing just some basic HTML and CSS coding, like learning to do that at the moment through freecodecamp.org. And yeah, one of their things is, did you search for it? Like before you ask
Yeah.
anyone for help, did you do your Googles? Like, and then yeah, like did you check the forum? Did you like, yeah, go through other
Yeah.
methods that you can figure it out yourself before asking, taking some time from someone else, essentially, for
Mm,
to explain it. So yeah, I think those are very good principles to learn.
yeah.
What do you think is the biggest mistake you've learned something from? This is a new question I'm going to be asking people on the podcast.
The biggest mistake that I've learned from,
Yeah.
I definitely think when I had my blog, because like I had like a music hip hop blog that I ran throughout high school and early varsity, and I just conducted myself very poorly. Like I thought like I knew so much about hip hop. You know what I mean? I thought like, oh, I honestly was very cocky in like my understanding of music,
Oh,
and
I
I feel
relate to
like,
this.
but I just feel like the way I conducted myself was a bit off and a bit, now looking back, I was very childish. So that definitely taught me to just be careful with like, I think just to like learn as much as I can and always know that I can be better, because that's something that I wasn't really acknowledging at the time. As much as I was pushing myself to learn, I was doing a lot of research. At some point I started feeling almost a bit like invincible, you know? And so that whole experience taught me a lot, which is part of why I stopped it, because I realized I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I kind of, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy how I was moving anymore. So that whole experience definitely taught me to keep learning and like also be okay with failing, because you need to suck at something in order to one day be good at it, you know? So yeah, that whole blog experience taught me a lot.
Well, it seems like we learned a lot from our like the same things from our blog experiences in some ways, because in the early days of Durban as I was an asshole. Like, I'll admit that freely. Like, and definitely got a bit of a big head about like the impact we had,
Yes,
and like, people reading our stuff, and like, yeah, some of it was from a place of ignorance, and that's why like these days I don't even like to write about music and stuff, because it's like I actually
same.
have such a reverence for art and culture and stuff like that, that like
Mm,
I really want to give something its true, like a true go, like when I'm writing about stuff.
mm,
And also, like, my opinion's gonna change in 5 years' time anyway. So it's like I don't want to have this thing that cements what I think about like Kanye's users, which it exists. It's now have to go
mm.
and read back on and like be like, oh fuck, got that one wrong. So it's like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
yeah, criticism's an interesting art form, and I think the online blogging space was quite an interesting space to be in. So I'm glad like we got to share that in some way.
Yeah, and we both learned a lot, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like that's the thing. Like, I mean, starting a blog these days seems a little silly, but like, if people want writing experience, it's definitely the way to, get it. Like, just start the things that you want to start, and yeah, you might become an asshole with a little bit of success, but then the world will humble you, and
Yep.
you'll learn, how to like actually be genuine and how to create rad art. And I think just do the things, and you'll learn from it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, yeah, I think that brings us to the end here. This has been a fantastic chat. I've really, really actually enjoyed picking your brain and discussing some of these things, because, yeah, I don't always get to. So thank you for letting me pick your brain.
Thank you for having me on. Like I said, I love this podcast. I think what was the first episode I listened to? I haven't been listening for long. The first one
Well, you
might
listened
have
to the
been,
Pumlani one, I know, because
I think I
you
was
won the
about to say,
Pumlani
I
book.
think the Pumlani one, I think the Pumlani one was one of the first. And I was like, damn, this is dope. Like, I just love the way that you guide the conversations, because a lot of the podcasts I listen to is like friends talking to each other. And you speak to people that I wish I could have conversations with. And it sounds like, well, it's done in a very friendly way, very casual way. So I really enjoy this podcast. When you asked me, I was like, what? That's so dope. So thank you as well.
No worries. Like, I dig your work. I think like I'm interested to see like how your career progresses and what you create as your skills develop and that. Like I feel like yeah, you're someone who I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on for many years to come. So yeah,
Thank you.
uh, cool. So after all that awkward vibes, where can people find you?
Aluta's theory, Aluta's underscore theory on everything, Twitter, Instagram. I think my Tumblr might be that, but like I don't really use Tumblr that much. So yeah.
R.I.P.
RIP Tumblr.
R.I.P. Tumblr indeed. Yo, we have been through so much when it comes to the internet, and we are about to go through so much more. If any of this last year, when it comes to Web 3, is is to be believed, because it's crazy out there. Like I've got like a lot of opinions when it comes to NFTs and stuff. I don't know if I necessarily shared them as much, accurately here, and I don't know if I ever really can, because it's a lot, man. It is a lot, because as I say, like I think the ownership thing is interesting, at least, although I don't know how much I care about that in a lot of different ways. But yeah, like I do think that there's technology with NFTs when it comes to contracts and various different things that it may be useful. It may. Like, I don't want to be one of these people who's like, there is absolutely no value to this technology. But like in terms of the art world, and in terms of especially like the crypto punks and the fucking Bored Ape Yacht Club and all of that stuff, I do see a lot of it as just being a Ponzi scheme. Like, obviously a lot of people will say that about Bitcoin and various other cryptocurrencies, and I think they're probably right anyway. I think almost anyone playing in the space, I mean, some people are idealist, and I probably early on was like, oh yeah, decentralized currency, that's something that's going to take off and work, and governments will let happen. Totally. Like, yeah, and like, you know, Bitcoin's not even that private, and all these different things. Like, all the stuff that's been promised when it comes to these things doesn't seem to necessarily be delivering. And it does all just seem to be, like, the whole crypto world does just seem to be people making bets. Like, this is just online poker for 2022. Like, that's how it feels to me. Or for the 2020s. It's like Beanie Babies meets online poker meets fucking Magic the Gathering meets fucking deviant art. I don't know. It's weird. It's just, we are living in strange times. And as I say, I don't want to immediately dismiss like the whole fucking thing, but there is a lot about it that is sketchy. And I just suggest to, like, and I've read a lot. I've read a lot about this stuff. And I suggest you do the same if you want to get into it, you know? That's I guess, all the advice I have. Other than that, yeah, it seems like the government is just throwing us to the wolves. But I mean, this country's been living with people are in different pandemics. You know, let's face the facts here. You know, some people are like me at times have been, you know, living as though we are in a pandemic. And then other times people, you know, like me have not. So I don't know. I know it's a complicated time to be in, and there's been no real leadership anywhere in the fucking world. And I don't know what the correct decisions are, because I'm not an epidemiologist. I just feel like we're kind of giving up on this thing. They're like, hey, Omicron seems like it's not as bad, and if you're vaccinated, then you're probably gonna be fine, so fuck it. They also probably feel like all the people that were gonna die from this shit have already died, so that seems to be the way governments around the world are treating this shit, and you're just gonna have to figure out how you deal with it going forward on your own now. Like, it's up to you to, you know, choose whether or not you're gonna go to different events and stuff like that, I guess. And yeah, I don't fucking know. I ain't got the answers, Sway. I ain't got fuck all. What I do got is shout outs. Shout outs to the titular titles tier over at patreon.com/almost perfect. So over at patreon.com, we have got the tier, the titular titles tier, and it is a $10 tier. Now over this tier, you can pick your title. It's amazing. Anyway, shout outs to Neil Green, who is our key grip, for Shendra Naidu, our spiritual advisor, Riz Ventura, our director of purchasing, Julian, our king, Karan Sleman, our almost perfect hedge fund manager. Please check on that. I see the stock market is fucking out. Shout outs to Russell Grant, the Far East correspondent. Shout outs to Karan Chetty, our assistant to the regional manager. Still looking for a new regional manager. We're not promoting Karan, so hit me up about that. Shout outs to Kath Jenkin, the inevitable ruler of the universe, and Queen Swifty. Shout outs to our chief sales officer of Subtle Heresies in the greater Overberg region, Rousseau. Shout outs to our executive producer, Stephen Olivier. And shout outs to our anonymous benefactor. Lastly, shout outs to you for listening all the way through to the end. You know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, fucking do the things. And I will catch you on the flip side.